so I guess just a overall theme on the birth stories, because I'm going to share 3, they're all different just because each of my children have been born in different situations or different ways. So my first child was born was a hospital birth, and my second one was a birth center, and my third was a home birth. And so that's kind of the angle that I was going to go at, because and they were all, I know some people don't like the term natural birth, but they were all unmedicated. And so so my first child was a surprise baby, if you will, because we had just gotten married. It was like a month into being married, and so we don't use contraception either. So I know some people are like, well, of course it was an oops baby. So I chart my pregnancies, or I chart my what's the word?
Cycles.
My cycle. Thank you. And so I was really stressed out because I had just started a job. And so I could tell I was ovulating, and then I was like, whatever. And so then, we got pregnant right away. And so I was pregnant my first year of teaching, first year being married. And so it was interesting. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I was excited. My husband was a little more like in shock. Like, I thought, we're charting. I thought you were okay. And I was like, well, I guess I wasn't. I don't know. And so, and he was excited, but it was just hard for him. The concept of figuring out how to be a husband first and then how to be a father, like all in 1 year. And so it was kind of, there's a lot of learning curves and a lot of things. And so we're still obviously learning. It'll never end. But he was like fully supportive of me having an unmedicated birth, just because growing up, I've never really was all into like Eastern medicine or Western medicine, and just like if I have a headache, I never took aspirin or things like that. I just knew I was going to be open to that possibility. So we actually ended up getting a birth doula she considers herself a birth coach because she does not charge. And she is incredible. And her whole philosophy is that as a woman of having children, we should, if we're financially at that place, we should be able to offer our services to other women wanting to have a baby and wanting to have an unmedicated birth, or even just to be there for someone having a cesarean section, etc. And so she did not charge us. We wanted to give her money just because she would sit down. Like, we met with her 3 or 4 times to talk about labor, because we didn't know anything. And so so she gave us education on how to have an unmedicated birth. She educated us on how to choose which midwife or doctor would be the right one for you. And so she was just a wealth of knowledge. And the perk for us too was that she was bilingual. And so my husband speaks fully Spanish. English is very limited. And so she actually, so she could speak to him in Spanish and explain the terms in Spanish, speak to me in English. So she's just great. She's just a wealth of knowledge. And so that kind of opened up to me the empowerment I needed to be more confident in having a natural birth and in having an unmedicated birth, advocating for myself as in labor, those kinds of things. And so when I went to the first doctor, I decided to try out the midwives, because she did recommend, like, oh, I heard this midwife was good. Like, these groups of midwives midwives were good. Like, so they were the nurse midwives, I guess that's, so they were, local in Idaho Falls. She really wanted me to go to Pocatello because she said she'd heard Pocatello was a lot, or Blackfoot, one of the two places, I can't remember. She said, I really think you should try there. And I said, well, insurance doesn't cover those places. And so I went to the first place that I knew and that friends of mine had recommended. And so they had recommended one particular midwife, but when I went there, they said you could get any of these ones. And so, so it was, I didn't really know what to expect with anything. I was just kind of going through everything. And so she would tell me, so the birth coach would say, so how was that appointment? And I was like, it was fine. We just kind of, it was really fast. We were in and out. And she was like, so they didn't ask you, I'm trying to think of something in particular. So they didn't give you an alternative to the glucose monitor, like to monitor your blood sugars? And I was like, no. I was like, they just made me drink that sweet drink. She was like, she was just like all these things, but she goes, okay, I'll respect that. But she goes, I do want you to know you can always like advocate for yourself if you don't think that that's an issue and that there might be a different way of doing this. And so, but I was just so like, oh, well, I just need to get through this pregnancy. And the pregnancy was fine. There wasn't really anything that stood out other than morning sickness was really bad at the beginning. And we actually didn't want to know what we were having. We wanted it to be a surprise. And so we were just going in as first-time parents, and, he was, I don't know, moving a lot, and there's just all these things about that. And I actually did, I think I lucked out because I did end up getting the midwife that I wanted. I had if I don't remember the name of it, but it's like the birth plan. And so I gave them the birth plan that my birth coach like had helped me create. I remember showing the birth plan to the midwives when I would go visit them, when I would go to the appointments, and they didn't even really look at them. They're just like, oh yeah, we do all of this, and like gave it back to me. And so when I went into labor, I actually went into labor 2 days right after school had ended. So I turned in my grades, had like a day to just chill, and then I went into labor the next day. And I remember one thing that I valued about the class, little crash courses on having a baby, if you will, with the birth coach. She said, try to let the labor go as long as you can at home, because usually when you go into labor, you don't want to be in the hospital just sitting there being monitored. And she just gave me really good advice. And so I labored mostly at home in the morning. And then by afternoon, I called her and was like, I think I need to go to the hospital. And so she was like, yep, you definitely are going into labor. And it was cute because my grandma was there at the time. And so my grandma had 9 kids. Oh, wow. And so she had, if not all of them at home. And so it was cute. She like came running up the stairs and she was like, is it time? And she was like, what do we need to do? And I was like, I just don't want anyone to talk to me right now. I just want to be by myself. And so they called my husband and he came home from work. He was working like nearby, thankfully. And he was like, should I go take a shower? And the birth coach was like, nope, you're taking her to the hospital. And so he was like, and he was even like, I told him, I go, because the hospital's across town. And I was like, don't go down 17th Street, whatever you do. And he was like, aren't you going in? He's like, aren't you in labor? And just like, that was all that could come out of my mouth. I was like, I don't want to deal with that traffic. And he just like, I don't know. And so when I got to the hospital, it was like, they were trying to put me in the wheelchair and I like didn't even want to sit. I was just like, I can't sit. It's just so uncomfortable. And when I got into, so I had my husband give them my my birth like preference, like the preferences I had. They didn't even look at it. And they were just like, okay, like, and it was just, there were like 4 nurses in the room. There was one telling me when to push. I mean, it was just like, I was telling my husband in Spanish, I was like, and there was one singing. I was like, tell her to stop singing. And then I was just like, tell her to stop talking to me. Because I just did not have the confidence to tell him, you need to stop. You need to leave. Like, I did not have that. And then my birth coach was not, she didn't like have that. I guess it wasn't in her job description that I'm gonna tell the nurses when to shut up. And because she was so sweet, and she was like rubbing my back and like helping me relax, but I was a spaz. I was like it was just, and then I couldn't push like in a different way. Like I didn't feel like I could. I don't know, I just felt very suffocated, and I was like, I need to push. And thankfully the midwife that I wanted came in, and she goes, then push. And I was like, what am I doing? So I ended up tearing, and it wasn't so bad. She goes, I'm not gonna sew you up because there's just no, but it was so painful. And I don't know, I just kind of blocked out everything, because thankfully in the hospital, like they do the skin to skin, because that was one thing that, so the birth coach I had, she hadn't helped at our hospitals in a long time, so she was like, make sure they do skin to skin, and they did that right away, and like they helped with like nursing and things. So leaving that was just a miserable experience. I told my husband, I was like, I just felt so panicked, and it was just not the labor I had hoped for. The baby thankfully was like so it was a boy, and he was like great, and he, I think you just kind of block out all the things that you didn't like about the labor at the moment. But then looking back, when I was writing my son's birth story, I was like if and when we have another child, I don't know what I want to do differently, but I don't want to do that. And so so we had our second.
Can I pause you real quick?
You're good. Uh-huh.
So that made it sound like it was a very quick like labor. Was it fast?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we got there about, I'm trying to think. I'm not very sure on the times, to be honest. Maybe 2. And yeah, it was like 3:30 or 4. I can't even remember. Yeah, it was fast. He was, yeah. And my kids are little, thankfully. Like I don't have, they are smaller. Like all of, like even my husband and I are both small people. And so yeah, labor, yeah, it was fast.
How long did you labor at home before you went to the hospital?
It was all morning long.
Okay.
So like I started around 7:30, and I was actually able to go to church that morning. And I was sitting in the back of pew, like, cause we have a back pew, and I was just like putting my head in between my legs. And our priest was like, he's like, I thought, cause later after we brought him to church, he was like, I thought you didn't look right. Like, I thought there was something wrong with you. And I was like, yep, that was, little did I know. But yeah, and actually thankfully, all of my labors are so fast.
Wow.
And they, yeah. So with my daughter, it was during COVID, and there were so many things that I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do, because thankfully COVID happened, just because I was like, there's no way I want to labor by myself, or all of the scares of like my husband testing positive, and so then he won't be able to be in the hospital. The birth coach won't be able to be there, because we did decide we wanted her to be there with us. But she also had like an autoimmune thing, and so she was super scared. But she goes, I'll go into the hospital with the mask and gloves. And we're like, okay, well, okay. But then so when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, which we did find out the gender, because I was like, I want something to look forward to, because it was just a crazy time. And so when we found out I was pregnant with her, I did go to that same doctor that I had gone to, group of midwives, and I find out that the midwife that I like preferred was retiring. And so she was no longer an option. So the midwife retired. And so we just went in there. And so one thing that was really hard for us was that, with the first, like on a financial level, we had to pay the midwives a certain amount of money, like, and we were on like a payment plan with them. And then we get this bill from the hospital for staying there. I mean, which makes sense because we're paying for all of the nurses that didn't need to be in the room. We're paying for, bless their hearts, the nurses that come in to wake you up every hour, and, like just all those things. And my husband was like, what? He's like, what? There's all these surprise bills. And so when I went back to that doctor, I remember signing like the financial whatever. And in the back of my mind, I remember hearing a friend say, you don't even have to stay with that doctor. Like, if you decide you don't like them, you can go somewhere else halfway through your pregnancy. And so I went and did the ultrasound stuff. Like, I went and did that. And every visit, I just kept getting this feeling like this isn't the right place for me. There's something not right here. And so when I think it was for the glucose monitoring, I said, can I just get is there an other alternative to this? Because I do have, I'm not at the point of being pre-diabetic, but I do have blood sugar problems. So I know if I was to drink a glass of sugary juice, my blood sugar would just shoot up. I know it. And after I took that glucose monitoring test, I had the worst headache ever. It was just this feeling. I just felt like puking. It was just not for me. And so I asked them, I said, is there something else I can do? Like, because I was starting to do my own research. So could I like monitor my sugar, like poking my finger? They go, no, because that's not always accurate. And I was like, well, I'm keeping track of what I'm eating, and I'm testing my blood. Like, I'm checking my blood. Shouldn't that be? And they just kept going around it. And so I finally set up an appointment with a birth center nearby. And I was starting to talk to my husband about, how would you feel if we tried out the birth center? And he goes, well, and he was just looking at practical things like, well, what if, your pregnancy is like, what if there is something wrong? Like, what if there is something wrong with the baby? Or what if you are oh my goodness, I can't,
gestational
diabetes. What if there is something? And I said, okay, I'm open to that, but I do want to at least just meet with the birth center, the midwife at the birth center. And actually, the distance from our house to the birth center was the same distance to the hospital. And so I was just like, I don't know, to me, because it seems like, it's not in our town, the birth center isn't. And so I go, well, it's just the same distance. And so I met with them. And at that time, my birth coach had given me the book, Indie Love. I don't know it has stories of different unmedicated labors that women have had at birth centers or home births. And it's not by a specific person. It's just they're different women, similar to what the podcast is, but in book format. And so I started reading that, and I just felt more and more empowered to look into a birth center. And so I really liked the midwives there. They just seemed so wise, even though one of them was like 10 years younger than me, but that's okay. No judgment. I mean, but I don't know. I just really got along with them really well. The appointments, I mean, they didn't feel like a waste of time. They were very thorough. And so I just felt so much better about going there. However, we had to pay, like, by the time our baby was born, like, we had to pay and when I met with them, my husband was with me, they gave us the cost, and my husband misheard. He thought it was a lot less than what they told us. And so I was like, so I was so surprised by his eagerness. I was just like, wow, this is great. And then when we got home, I said something and he goes, wait, or a couple weeks later after we had agreed, he goes, wait, I thought it was this amount. I go, no, I go, it's this amount. And which was a lot more. He was like, oh, and I was like, but it's okay. We'll just do payments. It's all right. And he kind of got a little upset because he goes, well, what if you do end up going to the hospital? I was like, we'll just figure it out. We'll because that is it's a thing that you do have to consider, that if there was an emergency and they had to rush you to the hospital, you still have to pay everybody. And so that was something that he was just kind of considering back and forth, and he finally got over it. So we stayed with the birth center. And so when I went into labor, so with my daughter, so she's she could have been a Halloween baby. She was due around that time. What was hard about it was that the the midwife had, so her friend, her, I guess her partner midwife, ended up having to go out of the country on like there was a last minute emergency, family emergency, so she had to leave the country. And so for that whole month she was by herself, and everybody was due around the same time. And so she was tired. I felt so bad for her, but she'd handle it with grace. And she goes, and so when I felt like I was getting ready to go into labor, she was just like, okay, I guess you're the next one. But I just really liked the setting. I mean, I wish I could stay there longer, but because it was just so cozy. It was just, I mean, they had the essential oils. They had because I did want to try having a water birth. So they had the bath, like they had just all those things. And so with, yeah, so it was just very, I don't know, it was very homey. And yeah, in the morning I felt like I needed to get checked out, and I just felt like the Braxton Hicks really coming on really intensely. And I showed up there and she goes, I guess you're staying. And I was like, I guess so. And so yeah, and I don't remember how long I labored for, but I mean, it's just, so I did, so during that labor though, I did have the baby, my daughter, in the water. I did, during the labor, the hardest thing was that I had hit a wall. Like I started panicking and thinking about that first labor and with my son, and I was afraid I was going to tear, and I started freaking out. And so that was so my birth coach was just like, she actually used a very firm voice on me. She was like, hey, like, come on. And so it was that was the only part where I don't know, it's just, it's similar, I guess, working out. Like if you're running a mile and you're towards the end, or a 5K or whatever, there's just that point where you've given everything and you feel like you're just going to collapse. And but what was funny though about that birth was, so my husband was like, okay, I'm here for you. I'm here. And he was super supportive. And then they go, okay, like you're going to get into the water. And I had packed his swimming shorts, and he was like, oh, I'm going to get in too. They're like, yeah, you're going to like be her support. And I go, your shorts are in there. Like he was like, oh, I guess we're doing this. And so he got in there with me. And that was another thing too about that labor that was also really difficult, was that when I'm in pain, I mean, I think it's just a human thing, I tense up and my whole body just like freezes. And so I did this thing with my fists where I just like clenched my fists and my whole body went numb. And so it was really hard for me to just relax. And they were trying to tell me like, okay, just relax. And then I was trying to remember a little crash course I took during this pregnancy about the contractions, about riding the wave and breathing during the contractions. And I was trying to force myself to breathe. It was a mess. I just felt like I held everything in this labor, even though the water was so much better. It was just so like, I don't know. There's something about having a water birth was super comforting to me. But it's just that aspect of laboring with her was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out a way to chill out. Um, but so yeah, she was, but it was scary because when she came out, she like wasn't responding. And so we think that maybe some liquid got into her lungs, when she came out, which is a thing. I have a friend who's a labor and delivery nurse and was like, oh, she's like having the baby in the water. She's like, I don't know. She's like, because, so yeah, you might tear, but like, or you might not tear, but this could happen. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. She thankfully like came out of it really quickly. She, so nursing also was, she like was really good at nursing. But she just had like, I think there was something, and I've never been able to get it figured out, but I think there was something that got in her lungs because she kept spitting out the milk, like the milk would come out through her nose. um but comparing that labor journey from the first to the second, it was just, I mean, it was 10 times better. I was just like, and after that my husband was like, are you sure, like, if we have another one, are you sure you want to just, why don't we just have the baby at home? And I was like, yeah. I was like, okay. But you're just kind of like, okay, I'm just here. I'm on survival mode right now. Don't ask me right now because I'm just kind of trying to figure out this whole thing of having two kids. But so with my third, he, so we, once again, I went back to the same doctor because I was just like, this is kind of a pattern. I'm trying to figure out, I want to go to the doctor just because I want to figure out if everything's okay. And so initially we went to that doctor, and with this birth, with the third one, I kept getting really sick. Like I had, so we had a lot of family stuff happen. My mom had passed away. So my mom had passed away, and then we conceived like a month later. And so, and those, I think we knew we wanted another baby. And so when my mom passed away, and I don't know if it was just like a mixture of just like the sadness and the grief of that happening. We were like, yeah, like it's time for our family to grow. And so when that happened, we kind of thought like, well, we'll just see if like maybe the baby will be like, if there'll be normal. But I kept getting sick, and so like dehydrated and really weak throughout the pregnancy. And the doctors kept wanting, well, the midwives kept wanting to get ultrasounds done because there were some things that they were concerned about, like the placenta and the placement of where the baby was. And so I think it was after like the third ultrasound, I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, I'm not bleeding. I'm just getting dehydrated, severely dehydrated. There's all of these things. And so I had more of a voice with this one. And so I was like, I'm not bleeding. There's nothing wrong. Why do you need me to get so many ultrasounds? And they just kept saying, well, this is happening and the placenta. And then I was just like, well, what if I opt not to? What if I just sign something that says no? And they go, well, you can't do that. Legally, you can't. And then I was like, and so I kept asking. So then at this point, I had gotten I did hire an actual doula, because the birth coach, she was getting older, and in the last labor, like she kept doing things during the labor that I was like, that's so annoying. Cause when I'm in pain, I have to be by myself. Like I can be in a little corner and just labor, let me do me. And, so she was just, So I just decided I want to see what it's like to pay for a doula too. And so I paid for this doula, and I was asking her a lot of questions in our meetings. And she goes, well, why don't you just look into the opportunity of, into the chance your baby's healthy. Yes, you're getting dehydrated. There's ways that we can help you, that you can um, solve that. So why don't you just interview some home birth midwives? And so we had heard about one in particular that she was really good. And during this time, um, there had been like a group of us, of moms, where we were all due like a couple months apart from each other. And all of those women were having their babies at home, because there was a doctor in town that they really liked, and he left practice. And so their next option was a home birth. They were like, if I can't have this doctor, then I'm going to have a home birth. And so it was kind of a positive peer pressure to me. Like, I've already done a birth. I've already done the birth center. So, and if all of my other friends have like are wanting to do this too, and they're open to it, I may as well just check it out. And so this particular midwife she was just so fun, and she had just a free spirit. Like, she's just very easygoing, but also really smart. She knows what she's doing. So I immediately just really liked her. And she goes, however, I have a lot of labors around the same time, so I'm going to team up with another midwife. And so we would alternate meetings. And so that was another perk about having the baby at home, is that the midwives come to your home. And so it's just like, to me, it just felt like that's how it should be. And so they could do the heart monitoring, and my daughter was helping, and like they could just do all these things while my kids are running around. And so it was just really nice, and it just felt right. And then thankfully at that point, financially we could afford to do the home birth. And so, when I chose to have that option, I feel like everything fell in place. However, this little guy is my most photographed baby, um, in the womb, because he still had to go. They were like, I'm sorry, I know you didn't like the ultrasounds, but he's measuring really small. And so I did go to another ultrasound. And that was like 36 weeks, when I was 36 weeks pregnant. And they realized that it was probably because he was measuring, or that part of his head was in between my pelvic bone. Like, he was just like lower. And so he was just really ready to like go, like leave, which is very like, it's very, telling of his personality, because he's my wanderer and he'll just go and explore things. And, but so when he did come, I didn't get to have the, midwife that I had preferred to have. So I had the second one. And actually when I went into labor with him, unlike my other two, I started getting, labor pains in the middle of the night, like the contractions in the middle of the night. And so I kept trying to figure out what to do, because I kept getting false, things earlier, like weeks before. And so my doula was like, well, let me listen to you, in the shower. And so I was like, okay. She's like, just take a shower and I'll like, just put me on speakerphone. And so she goes, well, I can't tell. And I go, I know, I can't either. I don't even know anymore. And I was really trying to listen to my body. But so it was like at 4 or 5 in the morning. I kept trying to rest, because she was like, just try to rest. And finally at like 5, I told my husband to just start setting up the pool, because it was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have this baby. And so when I let the doula know, finally, because I was like trying to push. I was like, no, I can't do that. I have to wait. And so, and I was holding on to my husband, like leaning on him to try to like help with the contractions, um, and with the pain. And I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have this baby. And so but that's the thing, when the middle of the night, when you labor, you're so tired by the morning time because you've been trying to rest, but you have the pain. So you can't sleep. So I was like I was like, how do I get this energy? Because I'm going to have this baby and I don't even know where it's going to come from. And so we had actually, we had like a religious practice in our belief where we get, our home blessed. And we actually like dedicate it to, Jesus and Mary, Jesus's mom. And so we had like a little shrine right in the area where I was planning on having the baby, which just like helped me mentally. And just, I was able to just do little intentional things in the home to help me like prepare for this. And so one thing a friend of mine had recommended, because she had had her baby about a month ago at home. She goes, well, what I did was, because I go, what did you do with your other two? Because she has 3 as well. She goes, well, what I did was I asked them if they wanted to be there for the birth, and I told them it was going to be really bloody and that I was going to make some really scary noises. And the girls were okay with it. And I was like, okay, I'll try that. So I went and I asked my kids, so mommy's gonna, this is gonna happen. And they're like, no. I was like, perfect. We got the problem solved. And so my dad came and got the kids. And what was funny, side note, my dad, he didn't know we were having the baby at home. He was just kind of like, okay, getting ready, bye. Like takes the kids, like, because we live really close to him. But anyway, so then my doula, though, she called the midwife and was like, yeah, she's going to have the baby. And because my doula was like, I guess I'll take my kids to school and see what happens. And I called her like right at the moment where she was getting ready to take him to school. And she's like, oh, okay, I'm getting there. I'm heading over. And so then she called the midwife, who was also on the way to like making a home visit. And she was like, I guess I will turn around. And so she took like the emergency exit to come back around because she was on her way to like Aberdeen, somewhere far. So yeah, so the midwife and doula are on their way. My husband's setting up the birth pool, and so I'm just trying to figure out what to do because it was just, yeah, this labor was the most vividly, I can remember the pain the most vividly. And and so the doula came. She was trying to do all these things that did help me with my other 2 labors. I had told her like, oh yeah, the back rub. And I was like, nope, that hurts. And she was doing the pelvic compression. I'm like, nope, nope. And actually I was probably yelling at that point. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. And so I'm trying to like lean on my husband for support, but he's doing the pool. And so the midwife came in and she, got everything set up, and I like got in the water and the water was too hot, and I'm just over here trying to figure out how to be comfortable. And I was kind of panicking a little bit because I thought, what if I could just have the baby outside of the water? And then I was like, no, I'll just get in the water. Side note, one thing I do recommend is that in town, they did have at this point free water like classes, like water aerobics, for prenatal water aerobics classes locally at the Apple. And those were incredible because it just like the water just calms me, and it also keeps me active because I wasn't a big exercise person while I was pregnant with my kids, but that thing every week was just so helpful. And I do think that helped me prepare for this labor, just because it just helped me get in that mental state of calming down. And so then I just remembered my friend who was like, I made these really scary noises. So I was growling because I was like, I don't know what else to do, and to try to get him out. And my husband was like, are you okay? Because I forgot to tell him. And the doula was like, no, that's good. She needs to do that. Because it was he was kind of stuck. I don't know any other way of explaining it, but I can't remember if it was his head or his neck. And just the position, I was going on all fours. I was trying to do lunges, and he would not get out. It wasn't a long time. Like, it wasn't, I mean, I've heard stories of it, people pushing for a really long time, but it was really difficult. And I I do remember I did not feel like I hit a wall in that labor. I felt like the labor, it was like, it was more intensive. It was like a lot more, I'm trying to think of the term, but I do remember it was just really, it was a lot more painful. Like, I could remember the pain. So the doula goes, do this thing with your leg. And so I like put my leg up. I had one knee on, like, in the water, like on the ground, like, well, in the water, and then the other knee up. And that like did the trick to get him out. Oh, and that was another thing compared to the other two, because the other two, I was like, yeah, I want to feel their head when they're coming out. I want to do all these things. And in the moment, nope, I just want this baby out of me. But in this moment, I go, you know what? I was like, I had told them before too, I'm going to try. I'll see how I do. And they're like, so then the midwife goes, do you want to feel the baby's head? I'm like, yes, because I just need something to like keep me like looking forward. And then I also talked to him, because it was another thing I didn't do with my other two. I didn't really like talk to them while I was pregnant, which I regret. But this one I did talk to a little bit more, and I also talked to him during the labor, and I actually vocally out loud said, like, I'm looking forward to seeing my baby. And I just said things because I felt like with the other two I held so much stuff in, but with this one, I mean, and maybe in return it was the pain too, but yeah, so it just, I don't know, so the doula, she was so cute. She goes, this was such a beautiful, like, peaceful birth. It was just, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like it was like crazy, but okay, what, because she's seen a lot more births than I have. But yeah, so yeah, it was just so much better. However, my postpartum was really difficult with him. Like, I got engorged, like, really fat, like engorgement really, really quickly. So like the milk came in really fast. And so I had mastitis that first week. So I actually did end up calling the like birth. It's not like a suicide prevention hotline, but it's similar, just because like it was like 2 a.m. I mean, it was horrible. There was, yeah. And thankfully, because with the doula that we had, she did do help with postpartum care. Like, she was really good at being like, okay, and same with the midwife. She goes, actually, the midwife was like, do not get out of your bed for a week. You are bedridden after like having this baby. Because that was one thing that I regret with my other two as well, is that I just thought there was just a stigma in my head that as soon as you have a baby, you need to be up and at 'em and doing things. And you have that adrenaline too that kicks in, that you could do anything, and you feel great. But I just, with this one, I was in my bed a lot. And actually in our culture, because I'm Mexican, and in like the old school Mexican culture, they actually they don't believe in anyone doing, like, the woman doing anything for 40 days. And so like she doesn't sweep, she doesn't do all of these things. And scientifically with my midwife, she goes, yeah, you need to stay, like, and I was bleeding a lot too. She was like, no. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm trying to take care of my kids. She's like, turn on the TV, do what you need to do, but just stay in bed for the week. She goes, you can't go anywhere. I'm like, that's so hard, because I just want to go somewhere and do something outside of the house and get fresh air. She goes, nope. And so yeah, with him, so it did thankfully get better. It was a lot of learning with him, just because that was, and actually another thing, I met with a lactation consultant per the midwife, who also said, like, who had pointed out ways that I was nursing my babies incorrectly this whole time. Like the size of the phalange is that, the size of that is incorrect. If I was using a nipple shield, or pumping, it was the wrong size. She's like, no, you need a way bigger size than the one that you're using. Um, she also introduced me to, it was like the pillow. It wasn't like the really, really soft nursing pillow, but it was a really hard one. Breast friend, something like that. So that was like a life changer because I wasn't nursing him in the right position. She's like, you like, this is what you can do. And so that was just such a godsend for me, just because he, poor guy, he was really hungry, and I was just like, I can't help you. And like, it and it just like, I mean, over time, it obviously, because I've actually stopped weaning him about a month ago, and he's
Oh,
2.
wow.
So it helped. It worked. It was great. But yeah, just so something I wanted to share as like my final thought, if you will. A couple things, but one of them for sure is just how important I think women who are expecting should be able to advocate for themselves and be able to listen to their bodies and be vocal about it. Because I just didn't think that was a thing, that you should say like, hey, something's not right here, or, listening to that inner voice, like this, this play, I don't feel comfortable here. And just really being vocal about it and persistent. And then finding your people that you need to find while you're pregnant, because like the doula, the birth coach, and take a birth class even if you've like had 3 kids, like me, because we did take the birth class. And it was funny because when we were in the class, everybody was like first time parents. And we're like, this is our 3rd. And you could tell they're kind of like, well, why are they here? I was like, we need re-education. And so, yeah, so those are like the main takeaways, I think. I hope the listeners have, I guess, is just knowing that their voice when expecting is really important, and just finding the people that you need to help encourage you in the journey.
Yeah, that drove me absolutely crazy hearing you talk about that doctor's office that said that you didn't have a choice with the
Yeah.
ultrasounds, with the glucose test.
Yeah.
That is so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if it's, and what's interesting too is I actually knew a nurse that worked at that office. And so I feel like she was kind of trying to scare me. She goes, oh, you would not believe how many gestational diabetes I see, and and they need to do it to help you. And she was the one who was like, oh, don't go with so-and-so. I've heard they're hippies, and I've heard they have a farm, and just all
Oh
these
my
things that I go,
gosh.
what's wrong with that? Like, there's not. Oh, and that was another thing I was going to say, that was really beautiful and helpful is, and I know we can't say names, but there's a gal here in town who has a local apothecary here, and she just, I mean, and I've known her throughout all my pregnancies, but with this last one, I called him my baby that went through her, because I would take supplements and things through, or tinctures with her from the beginning, and she was helping me through the dehydration problem. She helped me through all of these things in the journey. And I think she has 6. She's had 6. But she was just really helpful with even helping me prepare for labor. She goes, oh, this is what I recommend. And I know like some of the stuff, cause I would show our midwife some of the stuff that she recommended, and they were like, I don't think you should be taking that. And so I was like, and so then I would tell her, I can't. She goes, okay, I just want to let you know, large quantities of this would be bad. And I was like, okay. And she goes, but ultimately, she goes, I'm not a doctor, so you do what you need to do. And she goes, but I'm just letting you know. I was like, okay. So that was, I never felt forced to do anything with these women at all. it was just all in freedom, and we're with you on this journey to having your baby, and so whatever you need, we're here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like there was a big difference in care
Yeah.
between, the doctor
Yeah.
and then the birth center and the midwives.
Yeah. And it's I get, because some of my friends that were pregnant around the same time as me, financially they couldn't afford having a baby at home. And some of my friends were like, we don't care, we're gonna pull like it out of savings or wherever we need to, because this is what we really feel like is important. Yeah, so it was definitely night and day difference.
So even though your third birth, your home birth,
Mm-hmm.
was the most painful, was
Mm-hmm.
it still easier to deal with that at home than it was to deal with the pain in the hospital?
Oh yeah, I can't even fathom what they would have probably had me do if I would have had that same problem. And I did, so with my first, one thing I didn't mention was when I was doctor shopping, if you will. The very first doctor that I had seen, she immediately resorted to pain meds. She was like, "Oh, this, if you have the baby at this hospital, their epidurals are great." And I was like, "That's not an option. Did I not?" And it was kind of like, "That's nice." Like, she kind of just thought, "Oh yeah, unmedicated. That's nice." And I mean, an for me, I really strongly believe that we were we were made for this. And true, maybe it helps us become like more fierce mama bears. I don't know what it does to us. Maybe it's what turns us into like these very like self-advocating women. But yeah, and actually one thing that's beautiful, because we are open to having more kids, my daughter, she, after being able to see the midwives and what they do, she was like, I want to do that when I grow up.
Oh,
And she was just so sweet. And she even said, she goes, I think I do want to stay home when you have the baby, like if you have a
oh,
baby, another baby. And I was like, okay.
that's
Guess we'll
sweet.
see what happens.
Yeah,
I mean, I could see her. Yeah, she's definitely a little mama. So yeah.
that's cute. Um, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I think that's it.
I guess I have one more question.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like going unmedicated was super easy for you. Do you have anything to say to women who want to go unmedicated but are afraid of that pain?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I actually, I would be, I've heard that hypnobirth is really good, like taking a hypnobirthing class. So that would definitely be something that I think women should look into. Because I feel like it has something to do with the mental state of where you are. And obviously like how comfortable you are. And that was another thing I was going to mention. I think, and I know it's a little more financially burdensome to some, going to a prenatal chiropractor, I've heard, is also something on a technical level that helps.
Yes.
Because I did start to go with this third baby when I was pregnant with him towards the end, because we had just heard about him after my second kiddo. And it helped a lot with just overall health, but with my morning sickness, because I went to him in my first trimester, and then towards the end when I was getting ready to have the baby, but he did, the chiropractor was like, I wish you could come like every week, just because this will probably help you. So I feel like those two things would help. I think would help with the pain.
Yeah.
It is really scary, but don't be afraid. I mean, find your support team with your labor. And that was another thing too, is really vocalizing to, if you do opt to go to a doctor, and you get like a birth doula or a birth coach or even your spouse to help remind you, like, remember, like, this is this is our birth plan. You know, do you regret, like, do you not want to do that in the moment? I think, because that was one thing that did help. It was like, nope, remember your birth plan, remember?
Yeah.
Because in the moment when you're under all that stress, you kind of have to get yourself out of it, that mental state.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm really, really stressed right now. What is it that's triggering me, and what would calm me down right now?
Yeah.
So
maybe you need a reminder about why you wanted to go unmedicated. That makes sense.
Yeah, because in the moment you're not rational, and so you're doing all these things, and so jumping from like when you were calm and you're excited about having your baby to now, and I think there are some moms that's like, okay, something's not right, and that pain, I don't know if that pain, because I have heard of some moms saying like something was not right, and it turns out to be that there really wasn't. There really, like, a friend of mine, her little guy, the shoulder was stuck, and he was a big baby too. She was this little petite thing, and the shoulder was stuck as he was coming out. But thankfully, because it was a home birth, the midwife had told her, okay, try this way. And so she said, whatever it was, like, that helped him move out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It sounds like another theme that I'm hearing is your birth team is so important.
yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah. And you look at it kind of like a coach in a basketball team, or, you know, a coach for a track runner, because the coach should be there to help. And they're not going to do everything for you, but they should be there to be the encouragement, and to know you over time too, because that's what's important about getting to know the midwife, because they'll get to know you over time, or the doula even. So yeah.
Yeah, like that's such a big difference between the hospital, where you don't even know if the doctor or nurse midwife that you like is going to end up delivering your baby, versus if you have like a home birth midwife.
Yeah. And you do put a lot of trust into, if you do a hospital birth, you put a lot of trust into the medics that are there. Because with my first kiddo, I had a gallbladder attack when I was 20 weeks pregnant, and I was afraid I was going into early labor because of the pain. I didn't know what labor pain felt like, but it is pretty similar to a gallbladder attack. So if you've ever had that, it might. But and I just remember you put your trust into the EMTs, and they were so like very gentle, and they were just a calming presence. And even the nurses during that were really calm and just peaceful, like helping you through it. They weren't panicking with you, obviously. But and I had told my husband, I was like, maybe I should have the baby at this hospital instead. And then I was like, never mind, I'll just go to the other place. But yeah, and now I'm just like, hopefully I don't have to go to any of them. Hopefully I can just have the baby at home. So yeah.
If that feels complete, we can wrap up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a birth story that you would like to share on this podcast, please reach out to me on Instagram at Birth with Hope Podcast. Bye.